while I was going there, it was 1018, Mike Tyson, Eddie Murphy, where we had the first Wu-Tang performance ever.
What?
I want to put that out there. And he asked me to go on the road with him, summer of 96. I won for best freestyles on the mixtape for the 50 MCs.
Hey there, it's me, Roxy Cottontail. You might know me as a DJ, artist, designer, and New York City party promoter, or from my bunny logo. I'm putting all that on the table and writing about the years that transformed music and the New York City scene. I've interviewed 250 friends and colleagues I admire. I ask all and reveal all. Please join me in the tales to rediscover the 90s and the Y2K magical landscape of music, art, technology, and streetwear. This is Roxy's Tales.
Without further ado, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Tony Touch, Brooklyn in the house, Puerto Rican, all around fun guy. How are you?
And DJ and producer.
DJ, producer, radio show personality, recording artist, event coordinator.
My guest this week on Roxy's Tales is Tony Touch, also known as Tony Toka, a New York City producer and DJ who has influenced the world of music, blurring the lines between hip-hop, house, salsa, and more. Tony Touch has cultivated iconic parties such as Toka Tuesday and Funkbox. He's an award-winning mixtape king, radio host, producer, DJ, and has toured the world numerous times. Tony and I take a trip back to the 90s and explore how the parties came together during the Y2K era of New York City nightlife. Without further ado, Tony Touch.
When did this start for you, Mr. Touch?
Everything?
Yeah.
When did the whole thing start? Well, since childhood, I mean, just being able to bear witness to my surroundings at a young age. I grew up in East New York, Brooklyn, and then moved to Canarsie. And, from there, did my high school years in Florida, where I really was able to, develop the craft and tighten it all up. But growing up in New York and Brooklyn, bearing witness, dancing was my first love. I love to dance. A lot of house parties in my crib. And
yeah, like when did you start going out?
I started going out, I would say 85, 86. I was in Florida at that time, but I was coming back and forth every 6 months, buying records, absorbing whatever was the movement in New York, and then taking it to Florida and throwing parties out there. You're throwing like high school parties and renting out my own spaces and stuff at like 16 years old,
So you had like the hip hop and freestyle connect on lock.
Yeah, well, during those years, a lot of people in New York and Florida and the East Coast, a lot of freestyle music was happening, a lot of club music. I was able to walk the line of both, I played a lot of dance music, a lot of house music when I first started DJing, and hip hop. I played everything, and reggae, big reggae head too. So, I think coming from Brooklyn, it wasn't really that hard to like go and switch chambers like that. I mean, it was not far from us was like Flatbush and the reggae, Canarsie, or it was surrounded by all these different vibes and everything. So it just played right into my whole style of like DJing and the type of events I do.
And so where was your first paid gig?
My first paid gig was in Orlando, Florida. It was at a roller skating rink. It was called Pandemonium in Pine Hills, Florida. And it's cool because the radio station used to sponsor the event. Local radio station sponsored like the night or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I gained a little notoriety with people in the radio world in Central Florida. And then artists were coming from New York, still working records and stuff. So I was meeting artists from like, New York, like Daddy O from Stetsasonic. It comes to mind when, somebody that was working their records and coming to Florida. And I met Luke Skywalker and all these guys like way back in the day,
Yeah. And so when did you come back to New York?
I moved back to New York officially in 88. 88, I'd say, let's say 88.
Okay. Where were you going?
Clubbing.
Yeah, were you going
I
out?
would be in like clubs like well, I told you the first parties I had gone to were like Latin Quarters. It was the first club I experienced like on some hip hop shit. Red Alert was DJing. That was like, it was everything for me. Moving forward, you know, Heartthrobs is another club I used to go to when Louis Vega was playing there. Those are the spots. Roseland, popping back in the 87, 88. Later on, 1018, which used to be the Roxy. While I was going there, it was 1018. You know, Mike Tyson, Eddie Murphy, all the Sal Abatello, freestyle acts every week. You know, house music just making its way in. Chicago acts coming in, performing there. 1018 was a great performance space that I used to see a lot of performers there. So that was a.
Because I feel like the capacity of Roseland and the Roxy were somewhat. I mean, I know Roseland is bigger, but the Roxy was really big.
Roxy was big, yeah.
When did you start your get your name as Tony Touch? How did that happen?
I had like a little DJ crew in East New York, Brooklyn when I first started playing in 86, 87. I hooked up with these guys. You might have heard of them. PF Cuttin was the.
Oh yeah, of course.
From Blase Blase, you know, childhood friend of mine.
Yeah.
As well as another DJ. We used to call him Doc Dre, but he switched it for obvious reasons. So he became DJ 3D. His name is Andre, and he puts out house records now, and he's a hell of a DJ, hip hop DJ first, and then like he just got into all his house music, but like me basically. But these guys are like our little DJ crew, and they gave me the name. I was nameless, and then later on I became Tony Toka.
Yes. So your parties started where?
My first parties were in, I mean, I told you about the Florida stuff, going through high school over there, making some money on the weekends. But then in New York City, the first place I started doing parties in, before the clubs, I would rent out the Ukrainian Center Hall on 2nd Avenue and 8th Street.
Yeah, that's right by Veselka.
Yeah, that whole Ukrainian center.
No way.
The Ukrainians, you used to rent it to me. We used to bring our own booze. And we was doing it. We're talking like 90, 91 maybe was when I started really, you know, I was in a groove. Remember, I had just moved back to New York in 88. So I had about a year and a half still of, you know, getting myself together financially, getting an apartment, getting back in a New York state of mind and a flow. And then, I mean, the music was always there, but I was like a little bit on timeout for that period. But then in 1990 at the Ukrainian Center, the Showboat in East New York, Brooklyn, where we had the first Wu-Tang performance ever.
What?
I want to put that out there.
What?
I was the DJ that night. I met the whole clan that day.
Wow.
The RZA and all of
that. That was 1990?
That was actually, you know what? That was around 92. 92, 99. Yeah, I would say 92. So I'm a little bit before that, I was in home base. I was DJing at home base. I was in the room upstairs with DJ Riz and DJ Enough. And me, we would kind of be the rotating DJs upstairs. And then downstairs, of course, Funkmaster Flex, you know, Big Cat, God bless his soul.
Were you on radio in Orlando?
In Orlando, I was part-time. I had gigs out there. But in New York, my first radio opportunity came as I was the DJ for the Furious 5 on Hot 97. They had a show called the Mic Check Show.
Really?
Yes, it was Melly Mel and Scorpio, all the guys, you know, Kid Creole. And they had a radio show Sunday nights on Hot 97. It was called the Mic Check Show. And the people would call up on the phone and freestyle, and I would provide like the beats and stuff.
Wow.
And I did that gig with them for a few months. And all the while that I'm doing this, my main hustle was mixtapes though. Like, that was really how I gained any type of notoriety here in New York. Was
Yeah.
my mixtape hustle was strong.
And then you're like, just like walking around town with the mixtapes, or like
Yeah, I was at mom and pop stores all over the city, just going myself, selling them, But this is when we used to sell them at $3 to $5 a copy. I'd walk in and sell like a whole 30, 40 copies a pop, 50 copies, to one store for the week, and then it became like this whole
fiending.
thing. That was my bread and butter from like 91. I left my 9 to 5. I quit my 9 to 5 in 1991. And the mixtapes consumed me. I was just doing that. And DJing, of course, and
Yeah.
doing my weekend stuff, but the core was the mixtapes for me. So that's how people got to know me. That's how I got my bookings.
Like, who was there other DJs who also had the mixtape hustle?
Yeah, there were DJs like Doo-Wop and SNS and Ron G and G-Bo the Pro and Double R. There were guys who was working in record. I was also working at a record store in Bushwick.
You were?
In Bushwick, I worked at a record store. When I quit the 9 to 5, I did part-time at this record store where I sold my mixtapes also, mind you.
What is the record store?
It was called Music Hut Records. It was on Knickerbocker Avenue in Bushwick, Brooklyn.
After Cafe Society, 1994, 95, then where?
96 is when I started going on the road.
So you're getting out of town gigs.
God bless his soul. Guru from Gangstar used to do this thing called Jazzmatazz. He did like 2 or 3 albums where he would collaborate with all these jazz musicians, and the beats were kind of hip hop based. And, you're familiar with Jazzmatazz?
Yes, of course.
So in 96, he did his second Jazzmatazz album. And being that I used to work at D&D Studios a lot when I was recording my mixtapes and stuff, I developed a friendship with him. And he asked me to go on the road with him, summer of 96.
Wow.
I was gone for 2 weeks. My first time in Europe. I was out there with Donald Byrd and Dia Davenport. And 2.5 weeks in Europe. It was one of the greatest moments of my life.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awesome.
You were a resident at Vinyl?
No, I would just be hired. I would be part of the events there when they would do one-offs like Lyricist Lounge events, or sometimes they used to hold a mixtape awards over there, Just Those Mixtape Awards.
Like, how did mixtape awards happen? I remember
Just
that.
I used to work at Atlantic Records, so eventually, we're talking 96, 97, 98. This is like 98 was like one of the biggest years for like mixtapes in terms of like people making money. There was just a lot of hype around it. Clue was getting on the scene. The CDs started coming in. It was just like a lot of movement.
Did you ever get a mixtape award?
I did. I won a couple of them. I won for best freestyles on the mixtape for the 50 MCs. 3 years in a row, 96, 97, and 90, or 97, 98, 99. We also won best duo on a mixtape, me and Doo-Wop, for the Diaz brothers concept.
And so between all these gigs in the 90s, you're playing a mix of hip hop, reggae, and house?
A lot of guys are doing them, but I was probably the most versatile out there, like doing all these different genres, and I'm still doing them. I have my SoundCloud page and my Mixcloud pages, but more importantly, I got these guys. I put all my mixtapes on a USB, and they're with genre. You got hip hop, freestyle, R&B, the green, of course, for that reggae, R&B, house music. So I put my whole mixtape collection on these now.
After Justo Awards,
Yeah.
Where were you playing regularly?
I dropped the Peacemaker album. I got a record deal from all the mixtape hustling I was doing.
Wow.
and Funkmaster Flex and DJ Clue, they put out successful mixtape albums. So I was kind of next in line to get a deal. And, you know, mixtape DJs by this time, late 90s, early 2000s, we're getting record deals now. So I put out my first album on Tommy Boy Records, April 18th, 2000. I did that song with Total. We had shot a video for The Greatest DJ record. And me and Doo-Wop had the Diaz Brothers record. It was a great album. It was just shy of gold. It did like 400,000 SoundScan. It did really, really well. It didn't quite go gold, but I almost did it. Maybe when I die, it'll go gold. My New York stuff started taking off again in 2002, end of 2002, going to 2003, when I got a job on Power 105. When they launched Power 105 in New York, I was one of the first DJs they recruited for like their mix shows and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, I started doing club nights in New York where we would stream live on the radio. Babalu's is one of the big clubs I was a resident at.
Where was Babalu's?
That was on 44th Street, like right next to Daddy's house over there.
Okay.
You know, where they have all the restaurants and.
Yeah. Were you doing any online, like, forums, finding music yet through, like, LimeWire? Were you still vinyl? Like, when did you start switching into a digital format?
I was on the radio. There was a lot of CDs going around.
Yeah.
A lot of CDs still, early 2000. Record labels sending me music direct. I mean, by this time, I was getting all, like, the records first from the labels. A lot of it, when it would be the exclusive stuff, would be CD. Vinyl was still a thing. I was still like the last one to hold on, traveling with vinyl to like the year 2005, 2006, because that's when Serato started kicking in.
Yeah.
Then in 2005, I got the job at Sirius XM with on Shade 45, Eminem, the Eminem channel.
Mm-hmm.
I got hired there 2005. I'm still there. So that was another way I was getting a lot of music being associated, you know, with that station on top of the Power 105. But then I left Power 105 around 2005, going into 2006, because I had put out these reggaeton albums. I had landed a deal on EMI Latin. So I was doing these reggaeton Latin albums. By 2005, 2006.
I like hadn't even thought about that being like an accessible way to have music, you know? It's like but that's an important part of this story.
Yeah, because all you had was terrestrial radio, right? That's all you had. Now all of a sudden, here's Sirius XM, satellite radios coming in. And then of course later on, we got into our Spotify's and Pandora's and all that, like streaming services. So yeah, radio has gone through so many phases, you know?
Yeah.
I'm an underground dude. Like, I like to play abstract shit. And so my hands were a little tied being on the radio, you know? And then, you know, so I started losing a little passion for it, I think. And then I left the radio station. I stayed on Sirius XM because I could program whatever I want. There was no rules.
Yeah.
They're getting guests for me to interview. I'm getting guests. I mean, LL Cool J's coming to my show. I'm interviewing Eminem. Like, I wouldn't give that shit up. You know, I was like, I'm staying right here. This is all the radio I need.
Yeah.
And so I kept that, but then I was like, not getting the bookings and not clubbing as much. And also like the gigs I would get, I was just like, this ain't for me, you know? And then I'm hanging out a lot at the Shelter, going to like Timmy Register parties, Louis Vega, Club Cielo. These clubs are popping right now. What, you know, Louis got Roots at Cielo on Wednesdays, and then, you know, there were things happening in the city that I was like, I felt like I wanted to be part of that pulse, you know. I got like between the hip hop and the Latin stuff, I was kind of like yearning to be involved with this house community more. And that's what happened. So in 2008, I started the Funkbox party. My brother Voodoo Ray, New York City top dog promoter, most lovable guy in Manhattan, I think, throughout the 90s and early.
Yeah, so my first experience, I think, with Ray was because I became the late night coordinator of Joe's Pub in 2005.
Joe's Pub, yes.
And there was a lyricist lounge there for a while.
Yeah, he used to do door there too sometimes.
Yeah.
But we started the Funkbox party 2008 July. A couple months later, I started the Toca Tuesday party at Sutra Lounge. This is 2008. This is when the economy had totally, like, remember, collapsed. It was a shit show everywhere. So I was like, I'm just gonna do like these $5 parties. I want to go back to the underground. I want to do a small house party, a Sunday night. It was my birthday party too. So that was like, what do I want to do for my birthday? I want to play house music all night. I come up with a name. I hired Ruben Toro. He was hot. He was hot on Kiss FM. He would, he was like on there regularly, and so I booked him and did commercials on Kiss FM. And we started these Funkbox parties because I just wanted to get back into like that. Oh, another spot, APT was an intricate part in like me coming back to the underground because of what was happening there with Bobito, Rich Medina, DJ Spinner. These guys are doing, early 2000s. They were doing the APT vibe.
Yeah, I know Bobito had Monday.
Yeah, Rich had Wednesdays. And then I just say, you know what? I want to do these type of parties. And then that's what happened. That's how Funkbox and Toca Tuesdays came into fruition. Fast forward to 2014. Was it 2012? Jesus, 2012. Hurricane Sandy came and destroyed our city.
Yeah.
And Stretch Armstrong reached out to a few guys for us to do this event for the victims of Hurricane Sandy. The event took place at Santos Party House, December of 2012. And that was the birth of the Originals, which
you and Clark.
It's me, Clark, Stretch, D Nice, and Rich Medina.
That's so
Shout out to Stretch Armstrong for putting us together, and Clark and D and all the stuff they added, and me being like I was so in the vein with all these clubs in New York. So I took the weight off everybody, and I'll take care of the venues. I would find the venues for us, to keep the party going. And I eventually, I brought us to Cielo, and I brought us to Output in Brooklyn, and we've had some crazy, phenomenal nights as the Originals. Another movement I was a part of from the beginning was like that whole Cornerstone.
Yeah, Cornerstone
magazine and Cornerstone. We had the 1200 squad that they.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, TNT.
Yeah.
He used to service me records.
Yeah, Rob Stone. Shout out to Rob Stone. He was a heavy advocate for New York culture as far as club, DJs and fucking just everything. He's in my film too, Rob Stone. I love Rob. He started Cornerstone magazine, so I was there for the beginning of that. And that whole thing came about. The 1200 Squad was the name of the Cornerstone like DJ crew. They would put out these monthly CDs.
Yes.
And the CDs would also have like 10 records that were like shooting for radio ads. Like it was like a music meeting on a CD. So it'd be like I would do like this mix on it, and there'd be another CD with like, songs.
I remember them. Your relationship with Enough, how did that happen?
That's just developed over the years. Not too many Puerto Rican DJs in the hip hop scene.
Yeah, I can remember when he played. I had that song that Afrojack remix, and he played it on Hot 97. And I remember opening a bottle of champagne with my lawyer at the time. Really pleased. And
you were working that record?
What?
That was your record? You worked?
I wasn't. I don't know how Ultra put it out. I don't know how it got played on Hot 97, but someone had called me and said like, Enough is playing your record. Cause he was he played like Kid Sister, like Nails Done. He would play like some not record, they weren't being pushed by, I don't think, anyone, but
Wait, but that was your record.
yeah, Bounce Little Kitty.
What was it called?
Bounce Little Kitty.
Right. Oh
Do you
my
remember
God.
this?
What year was this?
2008 or 9, 2009, because I did it with Larry T in 08, I think, and then Afrojack remixed it in like 09. But it was put out by Ultra, so it got a lot of traction.
Ultra, like Patrick Moxie Ultra?
Yes. Sway was my party on Mondays on Spring Street.
I did that for you. I did that once with you.
Yeah, you did.
I
And
remember that.
You did Whip. Do you remember the night after Whip?
I did Whip with you. That used to be Greenhouse or something, right?
Yeah. Do you know how we met?
I don't.
Yeah.
Take me back, Roxy.
I couldn't tell you. I really don't.
That's what I mean. It's like after a while, it becomes a blur, right? Because
we're just like woven in the.
And it's like this fraternity, like we all know each other now. We're like, wait, I met you through who? And then you be introducing me to somebody that I've known for 100 years and vice versa. I'll be like, yo, you guys know each other? And you look at each other like, the fuck, of course we know each other. Like, everybody know each other, but nobody remembers how we met. It seems. But it's an honor knowing you, and I'm proud of you. And
I'm proud of you.
You're doing some great stuff, and
what a history.
All right, love. Thank you for
thank you. You're the best.
Including me, you are. And
have fun tonight.
Thank you. I hope to see you soon in the flesh.
Yeah, it'll be soon, next year.
Good luck with
Thanks
everything.
for hopping by. That's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment, and stalk. Bounce, little kitty.